Hi everyone, I'm Bob from World 5 List. Have you ever found anything weird in your backyard? Well, from an ancient burial ground to a car. Join me as I reveal to you 11 of the strangest things ever found in people's backyards. Number 11. A Ferrari. Now, let me explain. It's not unusual for a car to be in a person's yard. After all, sometimes you need to park your car outside, or maybe you just have junky or rusty cars laying around that you use for parts. Whatever. However, this is a Ferrari, but it wasn't in someone's yard. It was in someone's yard. As in buried in someone's yard. And it's not often that you find a luxury car buried in your backyard. So how exactly was it found? Well, two kids were just digging around in their yard at their house in Los Angeles when they hit something that didn't sound right. So they kept digging and found part of a car. That's when they told their parents, who then told the local sheriff, and thus began the excavation of a Ferrari Dyno 246 GTS. The car was from 1974 and reported stolen, so that explains half of the mystery. But how about how it got underground? And not like a foot underground, but like 6 to 8 feet underground. How? Why? Nobody knows, not even the tenants or the neighbors or the cops or anyone. Now, arguably, the most ironic thing, though, is that the Ferrari was actually in really good condition with minimal damage. And such, when the story hit the papers, the news spread about the car and a lot of people called in and tried to buy it. One man's buried car is another man's treasure. Isn't that how the saying goes? Number 10. Bells. Now, from Los Angeles to the Czech Republic, a man made a discovery of fascinating proportions, and let's just say it had a certain ring to it. You see, he was digging in his backyard to renovate the plumbing system when all of a sudden he hit something really hard. It was so hard, in fact, that he had to make sure that it was some kind of metal, and he just didn't know what kind of metal it was. So that's when he kept digging, and to his shock, he found an ancient bell. In fact, 2 of them. Unlike the Ferrari, though, we know what happened here for the most part. The bells were part of a local church, and one night a thief came in and stole them, and then buried them in a plot of land that he felt they would be safe in. Now, it's uncertain what the goal was of the heist and whether or not the thief was stashing them for later, or perhaps just trying to hide them for no reason, but either way, they were there for a long time before the man dug them up. Number 9. A bomb shelter. Now, while not as valuable as a car or even an ancient bell, if you found something like a bomb shelter in your backyard, you'd probably be interested in seeing what was inside. Now, this wasn't an obvious shelter, though. It was actually hidden amongst the trees of the land, but it was there and it was able to be entered, and so they did. It just kind of makes you wonder, though, why there was a bomb shelter in this particular house. It's not hard to come up with a reason or two why it could be there. For example, the house itself could have been built during the war, maybe even the Cold War, where the threat of nuclear destruction seemed like a real thing. Or perhaps it was for some other reason. It's hard to tell why people do certain things. Regardless of its reason, though, I will say this. They might have been stunned when they found it, but I bet they feel a little more safe knowing that if something does happen, they have an immediate go-to shelter to hide in. Number 8. A burial ground. But if you're new to World 5 List, welcome, and be sure to subscribe before you leave. I've got lots of new videos coming your way. Now, I'll be honest here, there are a lot of things that I wish I could find out about our land, and then there are things I hope I never find out. One of the never finds is without a doubt a dead body or even bones. So imagine the horror of a little boy in Utah when he began to dig up his backyard to make a pond and dug up a bone instead. Now, originally they thought it was an animal bone, but then 2 weeks later, another find revealed the truth because he dug up a human skull. The bones then went to researchers at a university, and they were shocked to find out that the man who was discovered was over a millennia old. They're now trying to figure out who he belonged to and why he was there. Sadly, or perhaps not sadly, depending on how you view it, it's unclear whether there were more bodies found. And if there were, I would bet that it wasn't from the boy. Number 7. A machine gun. In Calgary, Canada in 2014, a man was walking around in his backyard and came across something between his garage and the fence. That's when he dug it up to find a pillowcase that was full of items. One of those items, a loaded machine gun, and the other was a cell phone, proving that it had been buried recently at the time. But how did those items get there? Why were they put there, and who did it? These questions still have not been solved, but I bet you he's glad he doesn't have it on his property anymore. Number 6. An ancient 7-Up can. If you watch shows like American Pickers, you're going to know that certain classic items are always valuable. One thing you may not expect to be valuable are old soda cans and bottles, but they are if they're the right look and condition. So imagine one man's fortune when he found an old 7-Up can in his backyard. Compare this can's look to how the modern cans look, and the difference isn't just clear, it's self-evident. And despite some rust, it's in good condition, and a little cleaning up later, and I'm sure he has a somewhat valuable collectible in his hands. Number 5. A cursed money bag. Now here's a good case of if it's too good to be true, it likely is. For a man was tending to his crops in his backyard when he stumbled upon the find of a lifetime, a big bag full of money. Now, legit money as well, and it wasn't counterfeit. While most people would have kept the money and just spent it, this man had a good conscience, and he turned it into the police. Such a find is required by law to sit for 1 year before being awarded to the first one who found it. But here's where a twist comes in. Not long after the money was turned in, the man's neighbor then went to the police and warned them that the bag of money wasn't just theirs, but that they had buried it because it was cursed. Random? Well, maybe, until you hear what's next. Upon hearing this, the court then decided to split the money between the man who found it and the daughter of the neighbor who claimed it and the curse. Unfortunately, though, the man died a few days before his ruling was handed down, and the father of that man died just days after of a heart attack. Number 4. Mastodon. One of the funny things about archaeology is that the bones of special animals from the past can really be located just about anywhere. This includes a backyard in Michigan. Check this out. A contractor was hired to do some work for his neighbor. Doing the job, he went and got an excavator and began to dig. And when he did, he came across a rather large bone. He cleaned it up and realized that the bone wasn't just huge, but it was also really old. In fact, the bone that he found was from the rib cage of a creature. Then over the course of the next few days, 40 more bones were found. These bones went to a nearby professor who figured out that they were the remains of an ancient mastodon, one that apparently lived in the Ice Age. You have to figure that this was one of the guy's best jobs ever, right? Number 3. Villa of the Emperor. Now, what's cooler than finding an ancient creature? How about finding the ancient home of an emperor? More specifically, the Emperor of Rome? Well, that's exactly what happened to a man in England. While digging in his backyard to fix and replace power lines, he came across a villa. A freaking villa! Now, for those who don't know, a villa is a large country house, one that dates back to Roman times. Sure enough, as he continued to dig, he found more and more of the villa and realized that the architecture wasn't just of Rome, but of great prominence, meaning that the emperor lived there at one time. Naturally shocked, he then informed the town council, who informed a group of archaeologists who then dug up the entire villa, which was in surprisingly great condition. Still though, you have to wonder what happened to the villa to make it be found underground. Maybe the maid or the servant to the emperor just wasn't good at their job. Number 2. Pathway to the pyramids. Now, what's better than an ancient villa, you may ask? Well, how about finding a secret passageway into an ancient pyramid? Oh yeah, it's real. A man in Egypt was digging around in his yard and came upon a mysterious entryway. Like any good citizen, he continued to dig and found himself 33 feet below the ground. When he hit bottom, he eventually found himself in an ancient tunnel, one that was perfectly preserved and made of stone. Knowing his location and where the tunnel led, he surmised that it went to the ancient pyramids. Fearing breaking the law by entering the tunnel any further, he then called up archaeologists to figure out what was going on. And sure enough, the tunnel was a straight path into the oldest pyramid in Egypt. Furthermore, the tunnel itself was known about by these archaeologists, but was believed to be a myth. Number 1. 10 million in coin. Now, you know those metal detectors that people use for recreation? Well, the holy grail items that people hope to find are coins that have some value. In Sierra Nevada, California, one couple would hit the mother lode of holy grails because one day they were simply walking their dog, and as they did, they saw a weird item poking out of the ground. Curious about it, they examined it and found a canister, one that had gold items nearly overflowing. Now, more than curious, they then went home and did some research. The results? Well, they found out that they were the proud owners of gold coins from the 1890s. They were minted $20 gold coins, and they were actually well preserved. Floored by their discovery, they then went back to the spot where the canister was and kept digging. And to their shock, they found 8 more canisters. And by the time they were finished, they found over 1,400 of these gold coins. Now, just on the face value of each $20 coin, that's about $28,000. But once they were cleaned up and evaluated by a coin expert, they found themselves with about $10 million worth of coins. Thanks for watching. What's the weirdest thing you found in your backyard? Let me know in the comments below. Be sure you're subscribed, and I'll see you next time on World 5.